أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum. In the interest of time, I'll keep it very short, and hopefully people and children do understand the metaphors and the mental model that I'm going to discuss. The verse that I've talked about, this is the verse before the verse of the topic that the Maulana is taking. This is the second verse after Ayat al-Kursi, the longest ayah, not the longest, it is the second longest. And it basically says there's no compulsion in religion. The right course, the direction has been clarified from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in Taghut and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold, a rope which is the most trustworthy, and the one which the most trustworthy handhold with no break in it, and Allah is hearing and knowing. And after this is the verse which says that whoever takes Allah as the wali, Allah will take them out of the zulumat into the nur, and whoever takes the taghut as their wali, as their guardians, they will be taken from the anwar, the nur, towards the zulumat. So the reason I wanted to start with this particular verse is because Allah clearly says that there is no compulsion in religion. Everything has been clarified. It is apparent in front of everyone the choice that they make. It is clearly articulated in the Quran. It is clearly articulated by the sermons of the Prophet, which direction is the direction of the Nur and which direction is the direction of Zulumat. It is up to the humans themselves to make a decision for themselves which direction they want to choose, which direction they want to go in. And that is why Allah says that whoever holds the rope of Allah, that rope will never break. That is the most steadfast rope that will never break. So, how do we build this strong faith in the personality of the Ahlul Bayt alayhis salam? The way that we need to understand the Ahlul Bayt alayhis salam, and especially Imam Hussain alayhis salam, as we have been talking about from his certain attributes, the characteristics of the Imam alayhis salam. So the three characteristics I want to talk about is the passion of Imam, the second one is the kindness of Imam, and the third one is guardianship of the Imam. And what are the definitions of the three terms, and how do we understand these things? How are these things interrelated when we think about the life of the Imam alayhis salam? So first of all, let's think about a tree which is universal, because Allah mentions in Surah Ibrahim verse 24, the example of a good word is like that of a tree which will bring fruit, which has roots which are deep rooted. It will bring fruit in all the circumstances. And the example of a bad word is that which of a tree which will just be demolished or will be thrown off whenever there is a storm or whenever there is even light wind that blows on it. So that is the example of good word. And Imam alayhis salam has narrated in the interpretation the good word is the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt alayhis salam. So the question then becomes, how do we think about this tree? How do we think about the roots? So if we think about Imam Hussain alayhis salam as the tree which has the roots which are really deep rooted to the point that they were going in from a conviction perspective. The roots show the conviction of the Imam. Those convictions come from his ancestors, his household, his
So
Yeah,
when
go
it's
ahead.
a day of judgment, what if you have the same good deeds and bad deeds? What if you have the same amount?
So, mashallah, very good question. So, if you Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, if you have same number of good deeds and bad deeds, the balance will tilt if you have the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. If you have the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, even if you have bad deeds, people will be taken out from those who are sinners because of the wilayah, because of coming to the majalis of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So let's just build on this example because I want to talk about this tree in terms of the roots, in terms of the trunk, in terms of the branches, and in terms of the leaves and the fruits. These 5 dimensions, hopefully children can understand and understand the connection between the passion, the steadfastness, the guardianship, and the kindness through this example. So with the understanding of roots, Imam Hussain alayhi salam had deep conviction because of his background, because of what he saw in the very early days of his life. When the Prophet was giving him those lessons, there are narrations that Imam Hussain alayhi salam did not even drink the milk of any woman. He only drank, or he only had the tongue of the Prophet was his only food that he got in the very early days of his life. There's also a narration that Imam Hussain alayhi salam was born at the time of 6 months. So he wasn't like the full, he was considered a premature birth. And that in itself is a miracle, which the Prophet then, he did not drink any milk from any other woman except for the Prophet's the tongue. And that's why it is so important to understand that Imam Hussain was fully, like when he was growing up, he grew up on the essence of the Prophet. So as he was growing up throughout his life, he had that conviction when he saw his mother going into the court of Abu Bakr, and he clearly saw what happened. And then he saw his father standing up against injustice, against tyranny, and highlighting how things should be versus what things were. Those kind of convictions were very important, that laid the foundation of the passion that Imam Hussain Islam had. And that passion, those roots, give way to the trunk that the tree of Imam Hussain Islam is. What does the trunk do? Trunk keeps the tree steady. If you have a flimsy trunk, the tree or the plant will just fold whenever there is a strong wind. But when there is the trunk which is strong, it will not bow down to anything. It will stand tough during storms, during hurricane. How many trees, if you've gone to the different places, especially like California, where you have hundreds of year-old trees, those trees have stood test of times because of their strong trunk. Imam Hussain alayhi salam not only stood in front of Yazid, but his message continues till today because of that conviction and that steadfastness. And the example of that is when Imam Hussain was leaving Medina for Makkah and then to Karbala, Kufa. He said, I am not leaving for winning the victory or getting victory in this world or being successful or for materialistic gains. The only reason I'm leaving Medina is to reform the ummah of the Prophet. So his passion for that against tyranny, his passion against the oppression was such that he said, I am going to deprive myself of everything. I do not care about anything as long as I am steadfast and I do not give in and I reform the society. That is the example of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. With that trunk, that steadfastness, came certain aspects. For example, the branches. Those branches are the guardianship that Imam Hussain alayhi salam showed for the ummah, for his companions. One example that I will give quickly in that regard is what Imam did on the night of Ashura, when he told everyone that by God, tomorrow I will be killed. These people are only interested in my blood. All of you, you can leave. You do not have to stay over here. He even turned off the candles that were burning that night just because he wanted people to give them freedom so that they can do whatever they want. There was no compulsion. That is the Imam who gives freedom for people. That is the Imam of our time as well. He doesn't force anyone to come to him. He is waiting for us to show that we will be steadfast whenever he calls. And all of those are tests that we have in our life. Every time we are tested, that test goes to the Imam. And that test shows that we are steadfast and we will remain steadfast. That is the test that Imam Hussain did on that night. But at the same time, he gave freedom for people. That is the example of his guardianship, along with many other examples that he has in his life. The fourth point that I want to highlight is from those branches come the leaves of kindness, the leaves that gives comfort to the people, the travelers and others who come to that place. And that is what Imam Hussain exhibited throughout his life. His personality. We have heard in the speech given by Brother Muin about kindness and compassion, that when the army came to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the army of Hur, they were about to die because of thirst. The Imam alayhi salam, not only that he could have defeated them, he could have just left them and they would have died anyways, but he gave them water to the enemies at the time that he knew that this will be the enemy which will take me to Karbala, and where I will, along with my children, be deprived of everything. That is the degree of kindness. There are many other examples. One day, for example, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Hussain alayhi salam was going in an alley in a street of Medina, and he saw some poor needy people sitting on the street and they were eating food. They asked the Imam, why can you please join us in having food? Imam came down off his horse on which he was riding, and then Imam came to them. He sat with them but said, we are not going to eat this food because we are sadat. Sadaqah is haram on us, but you guys come with us and come to this place where I will give you food and we will eat together. So all of them came there. Imam Hussain alayhi salam gave a lesson that all of us cannot free a slave, but Allah has given an opportunity to all of us to give food to the needy, which has the sawab of freeing a slave. So it is important for us to understand like the level of Imam Hussein's kindness, but also the lesson that we get whenever we go to a restaurant. A very simple example, a practical example. Whenever we go to a restaurant, we give 5%, 10% tip. Along with the tip, if we say we're going to give 5% in charity of the same bill that we're giving, if it is $100, we're going to give $5 for charity and $10 as tip. That $5 doesn't make a lot of difference, but that $5 becomes that sadaqah that Imam said. If you take it out from your food, from your life, it will solve many of your problems. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So I'll end with this particular aspect, last aspect, which is about the fruits that come from the tree. So far we've talked about the roots. Until unless the roots are strong, and that's why it's really important for the children to understand this concept. Until unless the roots are strong, there will not be consistency, there will always be confusion, especially the confusion that is introduced by the zulumat, because they come with all the different techniques. They come to the point that they change the interpretation of the Quran. I've personally read the Quran of Maulana Maududi, who is a famous Pakistani scholar like Ahl Sunnah. They have in chapter 3, verse 61, the verse of Mubahila. They skipped the entire event of Mubahila. They just said there was a competition and the Prophet won. They ignore all of these things because it is not them doing it. It is the zulumat. the shaitan, who has made this commitment to himself that as long as you distract these people from the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, whether they go into one religion, another religion, one sect, doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want as long as they're away from this single path. That's his goal. So with that, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, what are the fruits? You realize the essence of a tree from its fruit. If the tree is good, the fruit is good. If the tree is poisonous, the fruit is poisonous. The fruit gives you the legacy of what it would be. There are two examples of the fruit that I want to share. One example is over the 1400 years, many revolutionaries. You take Martin Luther King, you take Nelson Mandela, you take those like Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi says that I was oppressed. I learned how to be victorious in oppression through Hussein. Nelson Mandela says that I was about to sign the paper with which I would have given up everything and I would have secured my freedom. But then I remembered that what would Hussein do? He gave up everything for the principles on which he was standing, for the passion he had, for the steadfastness that he had. So he did not sign. And after that, once that test was over, Allah changed everything for him. So that is one example of the fruits. The second example, the example that we have in the life of the Imam, those people who were willing to give up everything, those people like Hazrat Qasim. On the night of Ashura, you just listened to the Masa'ib. He said, I find death more beautiful, more sweeter than the honey. Dying is not easy. People who have seen what is happening in Gaza, you do see visuals where a father, I've seen these visuals many times, but two visuals really kill me. One was a 6-year-old son, his dead body was there and the father was standing in the Jamaat for Mayyat. He couldn't even stay straight. He went down and down and down. He just fell on the ground while the body of the 5-year-old was lying. Dying is not easy. And then I saw this image of a 7-8-month-old baby who was burned. For 24 hours, that baby just kept crying to the point that he passed away. Dying is not easy. When these people, these parents gave up their children to be killed in the path of Imam Hussain, the steadfastness that they had is the fruit of Imam Hussein's passion, guardianship, and his entire life. When Imam Hussain saw all of this happening in front of him, every single person dying, and he picking up the dead bodies of these people, and these people were dying in his arms, many of them. That was not easy, but that was the representation of his conviction, of his steadfastness, and that is what we need to develop in our life. If we develop that in our life, the Mawla Imam Zaman, he is looking for that. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we can build that capability in our life by ignoring the world, by ignoring the love of this world, by focusing on the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and make that the mission of our life, as soon as there is that critical mass that is built, the Mawla will return. Because that is what is needed. Those people who are sincere in their conviction, sincere in their guardianship of the Imam alayhi salam. May Allah hasten the reappearance of the Imam. And if Allah thinks, oh Allah, if you think that the world is full of injustice to the point that there is no recovery, humans have lost their morality. Humans have reached a point where they do not care about morality. And we have seen that in front of our eyes. Oh Allah, please return the Imam of our time so that the world is filled with justice. And I will end with the dua of Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam, who prayed this dua so that the Zalimeen, wherever they may be, they are destroyed. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi ighfirli wa li walidayya wa liman dakhala baytiya mu'minin wa lil mu'minin wal mu'minat wa la tazid az-zalimina illa tabara bihaqqi Muhammad wa Ali wa Fatima wal Hasan wal Hussain wa tisat al-tahirin min zurriyat al-Hussain alayhi salam wa Imam al-Zaman ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu wa sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.